Adamantium Hour. I'm your host, Wes from Thinking Critical. Today we're going to have the Dok and Perch on the stream, but Perch hasn't quite made it yet. But Dok, how are you doing today?
Hey guys, how's everything going?
So we didn't talk about Powers of X or Powers of 10 yesterday. What did you think of the latest issue?
You know what? I finally had a chance to read it first thing this morning, and I really liked it. I mean, it was definitely an exposition heavy issue, but it started filling in some gaps. Oh, there's Perch.
Yeah, Perch made it. What's up, buddy?
Hey.
Morning.
Good morning.
All right. So we're just going to give a couple of thoughts on House of 10, Powers of 10, and then get into the show. We have like 20 topics today, so we got a lot of stuff to get through. But
Excellent.
It was a kind of an exposition heavy, but it was filling in so many gaps, and it was like so much connective tissue. And I honestly I don't think these are the events preceding House of X number 5. I think this is like Charles refining or perfecting the timeline. Like I think it's him doing it better, but I will admit I could be wrong because Perch, I guess you have a new theory, correct?
Well, I mean, my theory had been that everything we're seeing right now is a different timeline. It's a different take. This X-Men being reborn and all the rest was not going to be what Dawn of X was going to continue with. But it's pretty clear at this point we are seeing the groundwork to those series, and the events, at least some of the events in this whole run, will actually carry forward and be ongoing. But it's changed my mind to think that a lot of the events we're seeing now is kind of how we got here, and why the events that we're going to launch into will be a lie, or why these aren't the X-Men we think they are, or their mission isn't what we think it is. And that's what I think is coming. But I think this isn't a story, an alternate kind of Days of Future Past story that's going to go away or be retconned. I think we are seeing stuff that the X-Men are going to have to deal with long term.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree with you there. Like I said, I think some of the stuff that happened in House of X number 5, like this is a precursor for that, but he's like perfecting it so it doesn't go so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's kind of one of my theories. Doc, did you have any thoughts on the overall implications of that before we head into these 3 viewer theories that we have?
You know what? Not really. I mean, nothing really to add to that.
Oh, but before we do it, let's talk about Forge. Was it great seeing him? I know, Perch, you did a video recently. I believe I linked it into my House of or Powers of 10 review for anyone that was wanting an update on Forge. What did you think about that?
That was great. It's great to use a character. It's been an underused character with a really nice set of background and kind of the conflicts that the character has, and a lot of the internal kind of struggle that goes on there. So I would love seeing him there again. I hope we're going to see more of him. It was interesting because his entry into the X-Men universe was creating a weapon that ultimately robbed Storm of her powers, was a negative. And so here he's being kind of coerced or encouraged to build this mobile Cerebro. And if this isn't the Xavier we think it is, if this is a villain, it's once again kind of Forge being put into a position where he's making something that's going to be harmful. But it was great seeing him. I really do like that character.
Mm-hmm. Doc, you're a fan of Forge as well, right?
I am.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I noticed about that was he was wearing because remember, Forge is the one that designed those, the late 80s, early 90s kind of generic training X-Men costumes.
Mm-hmm.
But his did not have the X in it. So that may have been pre him joining the X-Men.
Yep. I saw that too. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, I love the fact that Forge is there. I'm just trying to figure out, it happened in year 0. So it's probably honestly happened before he shot Storm accidentally when he was trying to shoot Rogue. I think that this happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a pre his introduction in like the 170s, 180s. I think this happened before then.
All right. So, we talk about Forge and stuff. Let's get into these theories because I have two awesome theories and then like one really good point that I wanted to talk to you guys about before we get into Dawn of X series and see how these have been set up, because I'm kind of blown away the way you set them up. Like my feelings on all of them have changed a bit. But the first theory, all right, let's get the banner going. There we go. The first theory is from one of my viewers from Australia, Uncanny Avenger. He says the librarian has Xavier's conscience because we see him with the Cerebro helmet at the start, and Nimrod the Greater calls him librarian because he catalogs the consciousness of all the mutants on Earth. Also, Nimrod the Greater is the one with Cerebro merged somehow with Nimrod the Lesser. Just go back and reread the first convo, and it all makes sense. The Ascension timeline is where Xavier realizes the cost of what he's done with Cerebro Nimrod the Lesser, cataloging the consciousness of all the mutants and how it's perfect for the phalanx to consume at the same time wiping away every living thing on Earth. In turn, realizing the cost of what he's doing with the resurrection with Cerebro and the now timeline causing the Universal Predator. So what he's saying is the librarian is using Cerebro, has the catalog of all the mutant conscious, and that is what is ultimately drawing in the phalanx. What do you guys think about that being Xavier's conscience?
I think it's probably right. I think that's a good theory. So in going back and reading this run, Powers of X #1 gives us a lot of information. I think a lot more than we thought when we first read the issue. And there's just a lot of little scenes of the librarian and Nimrod the Lesser, and kind of how some of this stuff was going on. So I think that's a very good theory. I do think that's why we're seeing kind of this end timeline, because why bother seeing the end timeline at all? I mean, especially if we're talking about different lives of Moira and different events here, this end timeline seems very throwaway unless there is something very critical kind of going on there. And I think that's a good theory as to what it is. What do you think, Doc?
Actually, I love that theory. And that may be one of the things that they need to change in the future, or it could be their way of figuring out a way to draw in the phalanx, and so that they can get inside and figure out how to defeat the phalanx. But I think all of this stuff is, I mean, it's starting to get a little big brained for me. I'm kind of a dummy sometimes. And as much as I grasp it, but I'm not sure I'm putting all the puzzle pieces together at this point. I'm not sure. This is sometimes it makes my brain hurt, and I need to like think about it for a lot longer.
So do you think that the Ascension timeline is an inevitability? Like this is the end game of like multiple timelines, is the phalanx coming and consuming?
I do. I think that's, I absolutely do. I think that's why we have all these pages that Hickman has done with kind of the different steps of evolution and where kind of machine world goes and other things. I think that's absolutely kind of what we're seeing here, is that it's the conclusion to many storylines. I've heard from I don't know, source is the best way to put it, but that we will get a kind of different reading order for these issues, all the way to the point where when you buy the collected version, you'll get a digital copy, but one of the features to the digital copy is the ability to read it in the order it was printed, the order we're getting it now, and also a reshuffled version where you're going to get it in more coherent pieces put together. So you'll have that option to read it both ways, which, if true, that's an awesome feature. And I think that would be pretty great.
Yeah, because they did that with Pulp Fiction, where you could watch it in like linear order. It's not as good as the way they released it, but it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they did that with Sin City as well, where you could watch all four or five of the mini films as each story separate, or you can watch the theatrical version with it like kind of all cut together.
All right, so, in the chats we got Jess Pele. He's our retail expert. He's normal on Comics Aficionados. Great to see you here. Also, we got Gateway into Comics Chase. He's a huge X-Men fan. He has a lot of great House of X Powers of 10 content as well. So I also want to hit on this. You know, we're seeing different color hues throughout the book. You know, we're seeing reds, yellows, and golds. And the one timeline where we see them all kind of mixed together, you know, is the X3 timeline. So that's kind of the reason that I think that it's like the inevitable. It's always the end game is that the Phalanx comes and consumes everything. Doc, have you noticed the colors? Do you think that's what that's meant to portray?
You know what? I notice the colors, but only when I'm looking for them. I kind of, you know, again, I don't, when I'm reading a comic, I'll notice some detail stuff, but other times, you know, just background color, especially with modern coloring, where, you know, I can't make heads or tails of why they chose certain things for certain situations. I just kind of tune it out. So maybe there's an important aspect of the coloring, but maybe there isn't. I honestly don't know. It could just be modern coloring weirdness.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's intentional, but speaking of detail, I don't know if everyone noticed this. I definitely did. But when Emma Frost finally visits Krakoa, she's looking upon like the new kingdom that she's going to help rule, and there's the tower right there. Now that we've seen in all 4 timelines, we saw it in the X0 timeline with the tarot cards, the X2 timeline, it's the Tower of Nimrod the Lesser, and in the X3 timeline, it's where the librarian is. And now it's on Krakoa, and one of my Pinoy viewers, Romir Sukoldito, his theory is the tower. If it is indeed the same tower in the future, then I'm thinking it's like Cerebro's antenna, but the whole facility is one of the storages, meaning it stores information, knowledge the machines could use against mutants. So if the machines took over Krakoa, drive out the mutants, they maybe churned it into the future's library, which, as we know, they used to attract the Phalanx. I think that's a really good theory, that it's actually Cerebro's antenna.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a decent theory for sure.
Yeah. I think it's kind of his antenna plus his, you know, plus his storage facility, at least one of the storage facilities, because there's 5. And but I also think it's kind of their. I think it also is storing Moira's memories, which are the important thing. It was as useful as all the rest of them are for their cloning things. Moira's memories, trying to remember 10 lifetimes that span hundreds, you know, probably close to 500 combined years. That's a lot of gray matter to use. You know, hell, there's a lot of shit from 3 years ago I don't remember, and I'm only 38. You know, we run out of kind of memory in our brain hard drive, and she needs a backup more than anyone else.
So I think it's interesting, the tower theory, in that it's there with the storages, because we know there's 5 storage facilities around the world. Charles uploads them and then updates them remotely from Krakoa, so they need a tower. They need a receiver to receive the data and store it there. So I think that's probably right on. And there's Romir right there in the chats right now. Thank you very much for that theory. And you know, I think those are key nodes of infrastructure that if the machines want to take over and destroy mutants or even the humans, that they'll need to identify those, and they could probably use them against them. Yeah.
And as they keep pointing out in the chat, they're referring to it as Nimrod. That it is the rod.
Yep.
Right.
So and there's also one thing we know, that Charles download older versions of his conscience twice. So those are also points where you could go in there and maybe alter Charles's one of these legacy versions, maybe corrupt it a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think in looking at this run, I mean, there's a lot of issues with a lot of things going on, and I think there's issues that we believed were important, and they tell us are important, kind of with these the red signal here in the back and everything else. But I think there's some moments and some panels, and one of the things that I intend to do is kind of go through and catalog for people before this all wraps up, which issues, which panels are really, really important to see, but we're not necessarily being told to see them. And I think there's just these little pages kind of scattered around. Like I said, Powers of X #1, I think, has a ton in there. This scene at the end with the librarian and the Rod, and then the Maraud and all these other things. And then this page, the page of text, which can be overwhelming for people kind of reading the comic and then going back and doing this. The betrayal, where it talks about what Mr. Sinister did and kind of at what point he went into business for himself and all the rest. Kind of orchestrating this thing. It's interesting to me that of all this run, you've got Hickman introducing or reintroducing us to tons of villains, like really important. Apocalypse, that scene that's very impactful a couple issues ago, where all the villains arrive at Krakoa. He's playing with all the big players, but consistently, even back to the very beginning of the series, he's pointing out as Mr. Sinister being the one beyond redemption, the one that is the great betrayer. And it goes back to that issue that a lot of people panned or were curious about, where we saw Mr. Sinister kind of acting in a different way and being crazy, and Xavier and Magneto go to visit him. And one of the things they voluntarily kind of opt into is we're going to give you our DNA, including my own. Now, this happened a long time ago, so we don't know at what point the professor stopped being the professor. He's had resurrections and changes a lot through his timeline. So I think there's these moments here that we get distracted with kind of a different topic, like why Sinister acting the way he's acting, but big things were going on back then. And I do completely, by the way, just because I see it in the chat there again, the color I think is absolutely a factor here to pay attention to. As I read these issues back, there's clearly work being done there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I really need to reread them then and actually pay more attention to the color.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that it's like red, blue, and gold, like the X-Men series that they had to cancel.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's on purpose. I guess they're associated with the series. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think if you go to, I remember reading Powers of 10 #1 and being absolutely overwhelmed by all the information, and I think that was absolutely by design. He wanted you to miss some stuff that you had to go back and find, because I think that Hickman likes that. He wants you to reread his comic books. I think he wants you to wear them out trying to find out where all this information came from, because that comic book was jam-packed with information.
Yeah. And it seems like almost all of them are, and that's the problem. It sometimes becomes overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a different kind of storytelling than Claremont did, but it has the same effect, where you go back and you reread and you look for all the subplots and you look for the hints and the clues and everything else. It is, and I think this is the first writer on X-Men since Claremont to really achieve that level of reading and rereading again and again and again. Even Grant Morrison, who had crazy ideas going out, I've read through that omnibus recently. There's not this level of not only just rereading the comic, but going back 100 issues to try and catch up on something. I think the only other person that probably did that, and he was less about planting those seeds and more about picking them, was Lobdell. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think Scotty Lobdell did a really good job of that as well. He planted a lot fewer, but he had a lot of that long form, subplot that starts here and doesn't bear fruit for another 40 issues. He did that a lot in the him and Joe Kelly and Steven Seagal in the 90s. They did a lot of that, but not nearly as much as Claremont and not nearly as much as Hickman's doing. And I like that.
Yeah, and as an aside, I think Lobdell gets some hate online, and I mean, he's not perfect. None of these guys are perfect, but in terms of architects who try and build something that you're going to really absorb and get into, he deserves better than what he gets. And I wish he was doing the Legion of Superheroes reboot as opposed to the guy who is.
Well, I think I think if Lobdell wasn't the guy that essentially followed, 17 years of Claremont, he'd get a lot more appreciation than what he does.
I think that's very true.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to hit the last point from one of my viewer comments. This is from Black Man with Computer. Charles and Eric thinking of using Sebastian to use the black market to illegally start drug crisis, similar to how the U.S. did in South America. Bypass the UN naysayers by polluting their countries, their people, and keep them under heel regardless of the future. Hell, perhaps get the people addicted and hold the drugs over their heads to control policy. They're absolutely trying to do that. Basically showing them that they're no better than their tormentors. Yeah, it starts as the means to smuggle out mutants, but that's only a short-term consequence. They better be careful lest you get an Illuminati consisting of Doom, Reed, Namor, T'Challa, the Maker, and Stark, potentially even Strange colluding to crush them. And yes, the Illuminati would crush them. Do we think they're laying these kind of seeds?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I think we're headed for a kind of a better Avengers versus X-Men, or we're heading for an everybody versus X-Men. We absolutely are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to some of my commenters. I was like, it feels like the beginnings. It probably won't pay off for another year or two, but this absolutely feels like they're building to a really awesome Avengers versus X-Men that's memorable rather than the kind of disappointing one that happened.
And it was kind of ham-fisted in there that had the premise of it didn't make any sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
well, the one thing that I really liked about the whole Sebastian Shaw thing is that it already ignored X-Men Black Emma Frost. Where she's the white. They're like, yeah, no, you're the White Queen. You're not the Black King. Sorry, no.
Yeah.
And they just made Shaw the Black King again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love that. Something that Hickman said early on, and it felt like marketing at the time, was that he went back and he reread every single issue, and it took him like a month to do it, and he wanted to pay respect to all the storylines, and he made this comment like the X-Men continuity makes at times makes no sense, and it's extremely frustrating, but he's going to tie it together. He's going to figure out how to make this all work, and that he was going to refrain from dropping things wherever possible, and when he had to, he'd try and come up with a quick reason why he had to drop it. And I think he's done that. I do think he's honoring a lot of X-Men things in the past, and I do think he's dropping happily a lot of garbage that was kind of put into the book over the last, especially 5 years. He's cleaning stuff up like crazy.
Yeah. And if for no other reason, if he did nothing else in his run than just clean up all the mess that Bendis and then Rosenberg and Cullen Bunn or Jerry Dugan, whichever one, I still think they're the same person. They're the exact same person in my head. And all the rest of these kind of just people that didn't get the X-Men. If he can come in and fix all of their screw ups, yeah, I'd be happy. If that's all he did, and just wipe their crap out, I'd be fine.
Well, and it sounds like it's going to take it's going to take 2 years to do it. So I think the other thing that kind of is new information, and at least for me over the last 48 hours, is that there is a fairly coherent plot that's been outlined for the next 2 years. There is a sketch and outline, and it's going to be 2 years at least to work on the plot we're currently seeing. So I had assumed that this entry level series was going to be kind of this is what the future could look like, or this is what reality could be. But now we're going to go into a new timeline with Moira, and we're going to move forward with that. But this is kind of a cautionary tale comics, and nope, this is the springboard to all these comics, and it's going to play out over the next 2 years at least. Which is exciting. Again, as an X-Men fan, the fact that people are thinking ahead is just, it hasn't been that way for a while.
No, we're just like, please, just, okay, you did one good thing. Don't screw it up. Oh, wait, here's 7 bad.
Yeah.
Like, oh, please don't break it this month.
Right.
Just don't break it anymore. And now we're thinking, ooh, I wonder where this is going. I wonder where this is going. That's something we've entirely been missing for way too long with X-Men.
Well,
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, No, keep going.
No. Go for it.
Well, thank you guys very much for transitioning. Let's get to the Dawn of X series and see how we set up the 6 series that are going to roll out of House of X, Powers of 10. The first one is Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. The solicitation for issue 1 is Dawn of X. The X-Men find themselves in a whole new world of possibility, and things have never been better. Jonathan Hickman and superstar artist Lineal Yu revealed the saga of Cyclops and his handpicked squad of mutant powerhouses. How do you guys think Hickman has set this up, and where do you think it's actually going to go?
I still get this personally. I still get this feeling like he's just a little bit rehashing his Avengers machine idea from when he first took over Avengers and New Avengers. It's still rubbing me like that. Hopefully he does it differently, where it's not like, here's just this big roster and I'm going to cherry pick these 7 and then for this mission, and then these 14 for this mission, these 3 for this mission. I don't want that. I don't want a 38 member X roster that 5 go here, 8 go there. I just don't want that. And especially like the weird kind of rotating cast in the main book. I don't want that. So now I hope he avoids that. I get the feeling he's not. He's gonna do it with, that's what his main book is gonna be. And okay, you know what? He hasn't given me any reason to doubt him so far. So even if he is rehashing a little bit of his own idea from Avengers, but this time with X-Men, I'll give him a shot at it.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Perch, I know you're a retailer. What do you think about, one issue contained stories? I'm sure there's a narrative going through them, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be 6 issue blocks for one story. It's them off on different missions with different players. Is that appealing to you? Do you think that's going to work for readers?
It depends on how this entry series ends. House of X, Powers of X. I think, first of all, it's funny because the publishers will say readers want one and done issues, but readers typically don't. I've seen that process fail over and over and over. But retailers or publishers keep saying this is what readers want, one and done issues. That's never been what I've seen. But I think that if we're leaving at the end of this world with a lot of toys on the table, Hickman's kind of turned the entire X-Men mythology on its end. He's changed everything about how the X-Men operate, and Krakoa and Xavier and all this kind of stuff. He's dealing with 50 main characters in his hand. It's interesting because in Avengers world, he had to assemble them to be a big group. And here he's being given that big group from the beginning. That's kind of what the X-Men is. It's this massive amount of players. So I can see for a period of time doing the one and done issues, if for no other reason than to make sure you're catching up on all these different characters and you're letting the readers know here's where they all fit and this is what they're doing. I could see that working, not forever, but for a limited period of time, for 6 months, being able to kind of go around and see all the different characters. That makes sense to me. And as an X-Men fan, I would appreciate that, of like, oh, here's what happened to Polaris, here's what happened to Strong Guy, here's what happened to this and this and this. That would be kind of cool to kind of to identify. So if that's what we're getting, then great. It's there's a phase 1 and a phase 2, and it sounds like phase 2 is about 6 months away from Dawn of X, and phase 2 will introduce a couple more titles, but I am assured that it's not going to introduce 6 more titles. It's going to introduce 2.
But we already know that they're being written by Leah Williams and Vita Ayala.
So
no.
So I think there's maybe I think that at least one of those new titles will be by Hickman directly, and I think it will be more the ARC book that we're seeing, the Uncanny X-Men, if you will. So we'll see. In terms of the creators coming on, here's where, like Doc, I have a lot of hesitation. Some of those names I don't particularly like their work, and it's interesting. So over the weekend I did that interview, and the reaction to it is interesting to me because there's a lot of good comments. We can go into more of that later, but some of the negative comments are just there's comic fans who just hate certain individuals, and I can't necessarily figure out why. It's not necessarily based on their work. And with Leah Williams, I did not like that. I mean, well, it was bad to the point of being funny. I mean, that I mean, I still kind of wonder. I mean, I'd love to just, for sake of just being sane, see a comic that was not intended to be absolutely insane. And can she write? I don't know, because that comic was so insane that maybe that was the point. I don't know.
Well, I think she just did. Well, I think she just did one that was an absolute carnage tie-in and was equally terrible. Plus, she's been doing Fearless and equally terrible. So,
Fearless is a goofy book. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. So what's giving me a little bit of pause is that, confirmed by Hill, these creators that are coming in were picked by Hickman, that he did very specifically look for people and personalities to kind of fit the different branches he was trying to create. He absolutely kind of insisted that was his plan. So I like what he does with his books. I think he really thinks things through, and I really appreciate that. So I'm just curious to see how these two things add together. Teeny Howard is a good example of Belize, the Conan book, is not bad. It sells well. Gamora Thanos, or I guess Thanos with Gamora, is was received and then is tanked, and I just don't see how these pieces fit together. But yeah. I want to give it a try, because he's earned some credibility with me, so I want to understand what his plan is.
Well, see, I think Vita Ayala would be pretty good with a good editor and some oversight. Like, you can see she has some storytelling chops. Like, she can write out a story and some dialogue. I don't see that at all with Leah Williams, personally.
Yeah, I don't get that one at all. But keep in mind, those two have been announced as part of a phase 2, which it could mean a lot of different things. It could mean they're working with somebody. It could mean they're part of an anthology. I don't know. But there is at least one main book that's coming in phase 2 that will be by Hickman. So
I figured it out. I don't know. I figured it out. As part of the announcement for phase 2, we're going to put Leah Williams and Via Ayala on a rocket and shoot them out of the galaxy. That's our celebration. These will never get anywhere close to the X-Men again.
All right. And Schumacher saying good editor, how do you think we got this? When I say good editor, I'm talking about oversight from Hickman himself.
Yes.
I'm assuming he's doing some mentorship and guidance and, hey, this is the direction that you're going to take it. Here's where you start. Here's the end game. I want these 2 story beats along the way, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. No, it sounds like he is editing. Jordan White is involved. Of course, he's the named editor, but the roles of here's where the story is going, here's the architecture is Hickman. It's not an editor picking kind of where the story is going.
Yeah. And as far as the one shot thing, I really like one shots when they break up really intense stories. Like, if you do a 5-part story that's emotionally draining, give me 1 or 2 one shots, or maybe a two-part story that's more lighter fare. It's more fun before you get into something else like that. But I'm with you. I don't know that a series of one shots is good, because the Conan the Barbarian right now is basically that, and it's not good. It basically is getting worse over time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can't. It's not a good sustainable model. But like Doc said, I think, Doc, you made a good point. This is, in many cases, there are similarities to Avengers World. I just in this kind of crazy way, this whole concept works better with X-Men than it did with Avengers. Arguably, this is what it should have been this way all along.
Yeah.
In fact, I think about X-Men and what if Hickman had come in and started this whole run and done this right about the time he was doing Avengers. Kind of you erase the last, say, 5 years. Well, I would have liked to erase the last 5 years. So that whole thought's appealing to me. But anyway.
All right. So we think Hickman's doing a good job with X-Men. We'll see where that goes. Let's go to the next one, because this one I don't think they've set up quite as well, or at least that I see. New Mutants by Ed Brisson, with Jonathan Hickman writing a couple of key issues. Where do you guys think New Mutants is headed? I know it's going to the Shi'ar Galaxy, right?
That's what we've been told. Although I'm increasingly suspicious that the solicits overall are just complete garbage. But yeah, misleading is a better way to put it.
Well, I think they have to, because, I mean, look, the one thing that I dislike about Hickman's Avengers was him making Cannonball and Sunspot Avengers and then marrying off Cannonball to some Shi'ar chick. So he's hanging out there. And married with a kid, and so they have to go there if for no other reason than to bring Cannonball back.
Yeah, and Cannonball's it's his wife is it's the New Smasher, who was an Earth person who then joined that group. Sure,
the Imperial Super Guardians.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it does make sense for him to go there. I like Cypher kind of coming back into the fold. I think that title is probably the one that is on the safest ground, in the sense that if you are a fan of New Mutants, kind of the old New Mutants, it really feels like it's going to have that feel to it. Again, it fits Brisson. I think Hickman can add some pieces into it. I think that really kind of fits. I think that we'll get a lot of classic stories.
So this is the one that I find the oddest, because I don't like the lineup very much, but I think Ed Brisson's the only X-Men writer that's actually wrote a great X-Men story in the last 5 years. Like his Extermination was really good. But the lineup is Sunspot, Wolfsbane, Mirage, Karma, Magic, Cypher, Chamber, and Mondo. I think Cypher seems really great right now, and I think Karma is kind of cool. It doesn't really move me. You know what I'm saying?
Let's be honest. Every time Karma or Mirage have been in the New Mutants as a title has failed.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. They had to get rid of them to make them a cooler team when it was the original run. Then when they tried the one around the time of the Marvel that one relaunch where they added the X-Men with vampires and shit. That was X-Men. Yeah. And they tried it then, and they added Mirage and Karma back, and it failed. And then they tried it recently again, and it failed. Look, New Mutants with they're just not that interesting of characters. And making them central doesn't really translate ever into sales. In fact, there's a direct correlation between their presence in the book and sales being down. I mean, hell, the first time they brought them back, it was in X-Force. They brought them back, and then sales ended up tanking so hard they had to turn it into a reality show comic with all the You Go Girl and the weird Mike Allred, Peter Milligan era. Right. Because they had to kill off X-Force. That's how bad that it ruined it. They're just not interesting characters. This seems like a lot of the outside of Sunspot and Cannonball, it's a lot of the characters nobody gave a crap about from the original New Mutants title and Generation X. Mm-hmm. The ones that weren't able to really go somewhere else after their titles ended. And maybe they're going to finally, maybe this is the X-Men's Avengers, which was a bunch of, guys that couldn't carry solo books all stuck into one title. Maybe.
Yeah, I think, so it is, you hit the nail on the head. I do think it's a mashup of a couple different eras. We've got some of the original New Mutants, in that kind of, that early Claremont run, in terms of Sunspot and Magic, I think, and to some extent Reign is there. And then you've got some of the later come people. You've got, and Danny. You've got Cypher there. You also have the Gen X kind of mashup into this book. It will be interesting to see the tone and the feel of it. If it's, going, what made the New Mutants work kind of way back in the day was that it was, mutants that weren't ready to be X-Men, and kind of the struggle of, do we want to grow into that life? Do we not? A little bit more kind of rough around the edges with where the powers are. And, that's kind of the feel they need to do, but they're not really New Mutants anymore. I mean, a lot of these characters, as you say, there's, Sunspot's in there. He's been an Avenger now. We've got characters who have stepped onto a bigger stage. Many of them have been X-Men in the core title. So it's interesting. And I wonder if like Karma and some of these characters, Mondo, they're there specifically because they want to bring back that feeling of not quite ready. And Mondo, I think you could easily have some tie-ins to Krakoa. I think if you look at all these different teams, you see some level of psychic on almost everyone. And I think that's potentially important if we do have a big kind of twist coming up where Xavier's not Xavier. You need that ability on all the teams. I know there's some interesting things to play with. I think Rasan, as like you said, has done a good X-Men book. I think that these are the right kind of people to do this. I think this allows Hickman to be a little bit more crazy with his concepts, where with the X-Men, he that's his flagship title. So I'm curious how it winds up tonally. If they immediately head off to space to go get Cannonball, and it's more of a mission-driven team, then I think it's going to struggle with what do you do with Mondo in space. I think there will be some questions come up, but we'll see.
So I read the solicitations when I made my December solicitations video. So like one of the books, the one that Brisson is doing is about the new mutants on Earth, and the one that Hickman is doing is about the ones going into the Shi'ar galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being kind of split in half. So that your concerns there might actually be moot. Just depends on how he takes it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
All right, so we ready to move on to the next series?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so next we've got Marauders by Jerry Duggan. X-Men sail at dawn. Even this glorious new dawn, mutant kind face hardships and oppression from their human counterparts. Led by Captain Kitty Pryde and funded by Emma Frost and the Hellfire Trading Company, Marauders, Storm, Pyro, Bishop, and Iceman sail the seas of the world to protect those hated and feared. When I read this, I was like, this is going to be the worst of all the books. It doesn't sound interesting at all. But after reading this last issue, I might be more interested in this one than any of them.
Yeah, I think this issue, I mean, Gary Duggan and again, have heard a bit from him. I think this is the issue that surprised people, at least internally, for how good and kind of on point it is. And also, at least the tease that I've gotten is that this book, almost more than any of the others besides Hickman's, is going to, quote unquote, repair some things and shift some of the messy continuity we've had. And they're not going to make Bobby straight in this, but I think Bishop's here, so there's a lot to repair there. Storm's had kind of a weird run over the last 10 years of changing things around, so is Kitty. So this issue is about kind of repairing the characters as much as this concept that's been set up, which we talked about earlier, of going around, doing the trading, doing some black ops. How's Kitty and Storm going to feel about working with Shaw? There's a lot of elements here that could make this a pretty interesting book. The thing that I don't get is the interior art, and the artist they picked for the book has a pretty good style. Is I think will match it really nicely. And then they've got Russell, I won't pronounce the last name right, doing the covers, and the characters look entirely different from some of the interior art that I've seen.
Are you talking about the Thor guy?
Yeah, Dauberman. Yeah,
Dauberman.
Yeah, so he's got Kitty here looking, again, like she's 14. You open up the book and she's in her 20s. She looks like she's supposed to look. It's just weird, and I think you got to pick one or the other. It always annoys me when the interior artist and the cover artist are just radically different in terms of the style. So
I agree with that. Unless it's a J. Scott Campbell cover, and then I don't care.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I want him on the interiors too. So.
Oh, absolutely. Especially after Spawn 300. So what was interesting about Powers of 10 number 5 was they started laying out the government, and Emma Frost said, I want 3 seats. I don't want 2 seats. So there we see her, and we see Sebastian Shaw, and we see a 3rd seat in her section. It hasn't been named. I'm assuming it's Kitty Pryde. It was kind of put all over my comments. I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Perch, do you think that she's going to be announced as Emma Frost's hand-selected person to be the 3rd leader in her section that's going to be leading the Marauders?
I mean, I think that's the right pick. I think that's I don't want to say obvious pick, but that's the pick that would make sense. But this whole series has been about pulling the rug out from under us. So, maybe not. But I do think if we go back, if you're, again, thinking about Hickman kind of repairing a lot of continuity and bringing it all together again, we saw Emma and Kitty develop a better relationship through the course of Joss Whedon's run. And so if we're going to kind of reference that the two of them did come together, then cool. That's a good nod. But I also wouldn't be surprised if there's just some completely different player that's being involved here. That's not either Hellfire Club or X-Men that we're bringing into the mix. There's still a bunch of other mutants in the periphery, or X-Men characters, I should say, that haven't made their appearance yet, and I suspect they will.
Yeah, there's even some that are in these books that haven't shown. And then when you see the covers for all of them, you see a couple of them like, where's Nightcrawler? There's another one that's missing as well. Doc, what do you think about Marauders moving forward now that we see that Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw are going to be using the Hellfire Trading Company to infiltrate countries that don't want to accept the mutant drugs and exfil the like stranded mutants and get them out of there by utilizing the black market? Does that sound pretty cool?
It sounds less terrible than it did whenever they initially announced it. If they've done nothing so far, they've made me a whole lot less skeptical about all of these books. I never understood it, why it was going to exist, but see, I'm sorry. This is the book that should be X-Force.
Yeah, I agree with that, by the way. We haven't learned much about X-Force. We've seen some of the solicits, but we don't know much about it. But this mission feels like an X-Force mission.
I think we do know what X-Force is going to do. It was in the notes on House of X number 5.
We do. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, when we talk about
it. But you know, the idea.
I think they will work together, though.
I would hope so.
Get stuck.
Because here's the thing. This is not a Black Ops roster. This is not a roster for, infiltration. This is a roster of essentially ambassadors. That's the thing. Kitty, Emma, and Storm, and possibly even Iceman. They are much more ambassadors of the X-Men than they ever would be infiltrators. I mean, yeah, okay. Kitty technically is trained as a ninja, but this Iceman, the effeminate and mincing Iceman that we've gotten over the past couple of years, ever since Bendis wrecked the character. That's the last. What are you going to do? Send a gay man into Iran? Good luck with that.
I don't know about Iran, but I can't wait for them to go into Wakanda.
Yeah, well,
that's what's got me interested.
Okay, you're going to send Storm into Wakanda. Good luck with that.
There is some history there.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot. Here's the thing. No, because I'm picking the countries that that turned down the medicine, and Iran was one of them. So
Russia, Iran, Venezuela,
North Korea, basically all of the
Latveria.
All the Bush axis of evil countries plus the fictional axis of evil countries. Yeah,
Wakanda in that one. Yeah,
the threats. Yeah.
Well, Wakanda was for a different reason, but yeah.
Yeah. But still, they're going to need to go get them.
Yeah. So, send Storm into Wakanda. That's going to work out real well for you. Send Iceman into Iran or North Korea. That's going to work out real well for you. You might as well be sending Madeleine Albright to Saudi Arabia. It was a bad idea.
We don't know how it's actually going to go yet.
Yeah, and I think, so again, all these things circle back to earlier in the conversation. We have, I do think we are setting up a big kind of counter attack, and I do think it sets up a weird Illuminati style with Black Panther and Doom and a couple of these characters. That's going to be cool. I look forward to that. But it will be interesting to see how it pulls out. Are we going to get this Marauders team kind of as two, or are there going to be kind of Storm working under the auspice of we're going to save mutants and kind of get them out of here? And in the current Black Panther, they've shown her and Black Panther have kind of reconciled to some extent. Or is she going to kind of use that influence to get into Wakanda or what? And is there a different group? Are there a few people? Is Bishop and Pyro and some other people on the Marauders going to do some of the Black Ops stuff? Is there a shadow team here? I think there are some questions as to where this book is going, but this book is being, I mean, the people who've read it who, I trust their judgment, say that this book is very good, but absolutely crazy. And it's doing big, high concept, nutty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's, that's the other thing that I might have some concerns about. I'm sorry, but Jerry Dunn-Dugan Cullen, not exactly the biggest brain, person on the planet. He's all right for simple concept stuff, but I wouldn't trust him with big, high concept anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's an interesting pick. I think he's done some stuff on Deadpool that worked, and then he's done some other comics that are kind of just really out there. I do see him and Colin Bunn as very different. That doesn't mean one's better than the other, but I like Duggan much better than Bunn in terms of what he puts together. I know that's not necessarily the most popular opinion online. A lot of people like Bunn. He tackles more of kind of the villainous characters, people like that, but I think he leaves, I would say, more damage behind. He does things that make it harder for writers to come out behind him. So I'll give that to Duggan at least. He does seem to at least leave things better for the person who's coming next. But it's again, I'm like you, actually. I looked at these issues when they were solicited, and I'm like, well, I'll be able to sell X-Men. I'll be able to sell X-Force. Those two will be easy to do. Lots of people like Brian Edward Hill. Fallen Angel should work. New Mutants probably. And then there's Excalibur and Marauders kind of at the bottom. That was always, that was what I thought right at the beginning. And so we'll see. High concept, sounds good, and it's good if you're kind of in the know, but will it land with readers? I still think there's a good chance this book will not connect. I
still feel like Marauders and Excalibur were the Jordan White forced upon titles. And
that's not what it sounds like from the interviews.
Well, and I think that Hickman just made them work.
No, like Hickman, when he presented his X-Men, one of his first things he said was Marauders. I guess Jerry Duggan was in all the pitch meetings and went to him personally. Like, I really want that book. It sounds amazing, and this is what I'll do with it. So I believe that was part of his original pitch.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, okay, and maybe so, but Excalibur, those are the two that I always felt like were Jordan White's making him, he'll just make it work.
Okay, so let's move on to Excalibur since we're on there. We got to get to these before we get to questions.
Yeah.
Excalibur, a new dawn is forged. The other world is rocked by war. It's a new era for mutant kind as a new Captain Britain holds the amulet, fighting for the kingdom of Avalon with their Excalibur. At her side, Rogue, Gambit, Richter, Jubilee, and Apocalypse. This is the weirdest roster. Yeah. I don't understand what Apocalypse is doing there. And it's the one, besides Apocalypse arriving at Krakoa, they really have done nothing to set any of this up. So it's really a mystery.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is the book that I just say no to.
I'm not. I'm going to review the first issue, but I'm not reading this.
It's Excalibur with neither Alan Davis or Chris Claremont involved. It's them just doubling down on the terrible change to Psylocke, and not only what they screwed up with Psylocke, but now they're ruining Captain Britain with her as well. So you know what? And plus the fact that you add Tinny Howard to it, this is like the easiest no thank you in the history of the world.
Yeah, this is the riskiest book I would say of all of them, and again the eye opener for me again is that Hickman claims, and I don't think it's marketing, I think it's truth, that all the writers on all these books are people that he knows he selected. He wanted their style on this book for a reason, and so I don't get this one yet. I get it better. Like you said, I think Apocalypse coming into the fold and kind of his background and relationship with Krakoa, I think plays into this here. So I feel like I understand Apocalypse's role on this team, maybe more than anybody else's. I mean, Rogue and Gambit as a couple, that's good. They're still there. Jubilee being part of this power set's weird. I mean, there's just, And then, having Braddock be the new Captain Britain and do that. I mean, it feels like they're going to try and address some of the things that Remender did in X-Force when they had the Otherworld storyline there. So, I mean, maybe that's what's being played, but I don't. The pitch for this book is very weird, and this book's going to have a hard time landing with people. I think, from what I've seen, there's a belief that Rogue and Gambit are so popular with fans and comic shops that they're going to carry this book. And I'll tell you, they don't. The Rogue and Gambit Mr. and Mrs. X book didn't do well. I know a couple of the big YouTubers, loved it and raved about it, but it didn't translate to sales. This book has not been a strong one. So
I have this book feels like it's DOA. And just out of curiosity, did Mr. and Mrs. X number 12 even come out? Was there a number 12 or did it end at 11?
Oof.
I honestly don't. I don't remember. I feel like there was like I was
about this. I'm going to Google it for you.
Yeah, I'm doing the same.
Because I feel like there was supposed to be one last issue for it, and I never.
No, there was a 12. Yep, there was a 12.
Okay. So then it must have been so poorly ordered that my shop didn't even bother to get it in. Okay, that's fine. I'll find it somewhere.
All right. So generally speaking, we're the least excited about Excalibur. I feel the exact same way. I kind of thought the same way about Marauders, but this last issue really sold it on me. Let's get to the two that I'm most excited about outside of X-Men. First up, we've got X-Force by Ben Percy. The high price of a new dawn. X-Force is the CIA of the mutant world, half intelligence branch, half special ops. Beast, Jean Grey, and Sage on one side, Wolverine, Kid Omega, and Domino on the other. In a perfect world, there may not be a need for an X-Force, but we're not there yet. This one, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. I like the lineup. I don't understand Kid Omega and Black Tom Cassidy being in there, but everything else looks good to me. What are your guys' thoughts on X-Force?
I think X-Force without a Warpath, Shatterstar, or Cable, one of the three, is not really X-Force. Okay, I really liked Remender's, Uncanny X-Force. It was great, but it wasn't X-Force. It was we need to find a use for the name X-Force, and we didn't want to call it X-Men, Black or Team X, because those were already in use. Well, X-Men Black wasn't, but they weren't doing coloring books back then. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so those, I mean, it was the closest title to use for that. Yes, but it's not really an. I always felt like Cable, Shatterstar, or Warpath or Boom Boom need to be part of X-Force for it to be X-Force. But this is the book that I think that Marauders should be. This is the one that confuses me. Initially, I said, "Who in the hell is Ben Percy?" But apparently, he's. I'll trust you guys that he actually can write his way out of a paper bag.
I think he's great.
He's great. Yeah, I think he's a very good. Yeah,
and he's got the best chops in comics, man. Have you seen him? He looks like Wolverine.
All right.
He's a good guy. He writes good stories. He writes short and long at the same time. So you get an issue that you enjoy, but you get stuff that adds up to a greater whole later. I think he's an underrated talent, and I think he'll be really good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Also, with the X-Force team, there were some hints in the notes in I think it was House of X number 5, to whether there's going to be a special team that goes out and in special circumstances, they verified that the mutants are dead so that they can be resurrected. And I believe that's what this X-Force is going to be, or at least one of their functions. Is that what you're thinking as well, Perch?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Sorry, Mike's here. But yeah, I do think that's where it's going. And I think this issue, you asked about Black Tom. I think Black Tom relates to Krakoa. I think that's kind of the connection there. And Kid Omega, I think, is just, again, all these comics are loading up on at least some psychic ability there. Jean Grey's in it too, but I think you're going to have this split team. So I think this book makes sense. I don't mind. I mean, I'm not like Doc. I don't mind the fact that it has the X-Force name. it's interesting. I was just thinking about while you're talking, and I felt that way for a long time. Like there's just certain kind of totem characters that have to be on a book to make it the book. And maybe it's just the last 15 years have worn me out. Where just there's been so much shuffling around. It's weird. I don't pay attention to the names of these books. Like all of these books that are relaunching. I'm calling it more the Percy book or the Hill book more than Fallen Angels or X-Force. It's just there's a story that's being told, and the fact that it's got the name it's got, I feel it only is a very loose connection, with kind of the exception of New Mutants. But even they're not New Mutants anymore. So and they could, for me, and I know I'm more confused than everybody else. I don't want to they could call these books like whatever you want to call them. You can call them X-Men 1, 2, 3, 4. I wouldn't necessarily care. That wouldn't sell well in the market. It's not a good idea. I don't have that same kind of connection.
Doc, are you having trouble hearing Perch's mic?
Yeah. Were you backed off your mic for a minute?
Work on that. My apologies.
Or to get unplugged or. Oh, I got. I don't know what these noises are.
All right. It sounds like maybe things got better. Perch, are you there again? No, he's mute. All right, Doc. So you're a little bit disappointed that they're using the X-Force name, but maybe it doesn't quite feel like X-Force.
Just because it feels like it's just the name that they've kind of turned, whatever their kind of more militant division into. But there was always some sort of connective tissues to all the different iterations of X-Force.
Doc, I need to interrupt you for 1 second. Yeah. I want to say thank you to Nolan Nerd, $2 super chat. Wes, watching while I work. Have a good show. Thank you very much, Nolan Nerd. And Hoodat, have a great time at work. I believe he's at a farmer's market right now. And if you can hear us, I hope you guys do a lot of great shopping. And there's some great produce at that market. And have a good day. Back to you, Doc.
Thank you, man.
Welcome back, Perch.
Yeah. I apologize. I had a headset on, was using it, running out of batteries. So I'm like, okay, I'll switch to the computer. I did. And you turn off Bluetooth and the computer's like, no, I think I'll go back to that headset. Forget it.
Yeah.
Lovely technology. Gotta love it.
Yep. No, I just wanted there should be some sort of connection with the name, of X-Force, and just kind of repurposing the name. Sometimes you can, I guess, they've done the same in the past with other things. X Factor ceased to being the original 5 and became the government team with none of the original 5. And then it became X Factor Investigations. But I don't know. So maybe I'm wrong. I like X-Force when it includes one or more of those 4.
Yeah, but you're also a lifelong X-Men reader that's trying to buy every comic issue, so
yes,
you might have a deeper connection to these characters than other people,
and a deeper connection to the names of titles. Yeah.
So Perch, what are you seeing at the retailer? Is this one of the titles that people are kind of like interested in? Like, throw that on my pool.
Yeah, no, it's X-Men and X-Force are the 2. That's the tier 1, and then the tier 2 is New Mutants and Fallen Angels, and the tier 3 is Excalibur. And you see these very, very clear distinctions between each one.
Yeah, I think I'm really glad Ben Percy is getting this, because I hope he gets some shine and gets kind of shot up a little bit, because I think he deserves a bigger spotlight personally.
I do too. I think, like you said earlier, he's a good guy, and he does seem to care about all this stuff. And again, it's a long time connection to Hickman. So I think this book will feel very much in continuity. I think this will be a don't miss. If you're a fan of kind of wanting to know where the X-Men's going, it feels like you need to be reading X-Men and X-Force, probably New Mutants, and then the other 3 will be a little bit more disconnected. But who knows? Again, with Marauders, that pitch was stronger than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the last title before we get to the questions. The last one is Fallen Angels by Bryan Hill. The dawn does not break for all. Psylocke finds herself in the new world of mutant kind, unsure of her place in it. But when a face from her past returns to only be killed, she seeks help from others who feel similar to get vengeance. I think this is going to be like the low key, maybe the second best book after X-Men. I'm a real big fan of Bryan Hill, and this sounds like something that he'll be able to take and really run with. What are your thoughts on this one, Perch?
Well, let's see. I want to be careful what I say because, I'm very excited for the book. I think it works on two levels. I think you got Hill legitimately loves Quanon in particular, not just Psylocke, but loves that era, loves what was going on. Completely has a plan for how to make that all make sense, and I think it also plays to the strength of taking characters who are deeply conflicted inside. And the pitch here being that you have peace. So what do warriors do in peacetime? How do they come to fit with everyone else? And this book features three characters that are, for lack of a better word, they're legacy characters. You've got this isn't the original Betsy Braddock. This isn't the original Cable, and it's not the original, quote unquote Wolverine. It's X-23. So there's a lot of really interesting dynamics about who these people are. Do they have a place in the world? Were they created to be, warriors and have a single purpose? And now here they are in peacetime and how they fit in. So I think it's going to be an excellent book. I agree. It'll be kind of low key. It will be one that you can step into without having to worry about the rest of the continuity. But I also predict that this book is going to be the one that will kind of unravel the mystery of what's going on in the background. And so I think this book will wind up being pretty important.
Yeah. So, Doc, is that your dog?
No, sorry, I was moving a chair.
Oh, maybe the dog was running circles around you. But it sounds like the three of them are going to feel like outcasts, and they're going to be kind of like making their way through the world, and maybe they know more than it's being let on, and they'll maybe have an idea of what's wrong with everything. Doc, what do you think about that pitch? Does it sound like it's something you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean it is, but I also like the idea that it might also be a little bit of three people that kind of they don't have a place in the world, or they've failed at their goal, their duty, their function. Hey, we don't see Gabby, so maybe we're lucky and she fell into the sun. Or a volcano on Krakoa. One of the two. I'm good with either one. And so Laura's there because she feels like, well, I didn't keep my Xerox copy of myself. And Cable, he kind of already failed. Like Teen Cable kind of already failed at his own function in Brisson's X-Force run. And then Quanon really doesn't have a place. I mean, what is her function when she doesn't have the name recognition of Betsy, but she has the kind of everybody kind of just mistakes her for Betsy. When you're just like the doppelganger of the famous person,
right?
What is your function?
Well, that's what Cable is too, and so is
and same with X-23. They're all they don't really have a function, and maybe they do understand a little bit of what's going on in the world more than others. I hope that it ends with Betsy and Quanon getting body swapped again, and Teen Cable turning back into an adult, and Laura turning back into a 15-year-old, or falling into the sun. Either one, I'm good with.
All right, so we do have one question that kind of rolls into this one. Nolo Nerd was asking, what's everyone's theory on why Captain Britain in Excalibur is now a woman? Do you think there's an organic reason, or do you think it's Teenie Howard's choice, like a feminist reason? Perch, I think you kind of hinted at that earlier.
Yeah, I do think there's a point. I don't think it's just, please, I think everybody, we got to get off there's a big plot from Marvel to just kind of see this stuff politically. And I know I'll probably get a lot of hate for that comment, but we just have to start enjoying the comics we enjoy and just dumping the comic we don't. But because I think we wind up either missing things or we assign kind of understanding to something that may not exist. So I think that in this case, again, we're going to have to see it. I mentioned earlier, Teenie Howard is a big, that's a risk for me. I am in terms of these books and kind of what can happen and what she brings to the table. So I don't get it completely, but I also know she has a long friendship with Hickman. Hickman thinks very strongly of her. So I need to, at some point, assume that, Hickman's not a complete moron that wants to screw up his whole launch by putting in a crazy person. I've got to believe that. And we'll see. The issue comes out and it's terrible. And it's like, well, okay. But until it comes out, I believe there's a purpose. And I think that there's two fronts to this. First, we're tapping into Remender's run where we had the other world and we had the council and we had at least some commentary that Betsy's role in it was significant and that she couldn't take her true mantle, her true purpose in this world because she was conflicted. She did have that part of her still inside. She was still merged with Quana and with Revenge. At that point, there was still kind of a lot of inner conflict about violence and her place in the world. And she's done now. She's moved aside. That's split. So maybe now she gets to take up this mantle. But I think the other part to this that they may or not play into is if this is truly kind of a, for lack of a better word, a mutant takeover where they are trying to seed the seeds and they are trying to do all these things. This team and her taking on this mantle is basically extending that territory into the other world, into this whole other dimension and this multiverse of reality. It's an attack. If you think about it that way, that Apocalypse and Psylocke in particular, these two characters, Betsy as Captain Britain, you get two powerhouses that are going to basically take over a huge amount of territory and terrain, and that's potentially an interesting story. It makes them the villains, though, in a way, of how that all comes true. And I think, Doc, this is, I'm curious to get your take on it because this goes back into way back X-Men, in particular original Excalibur territory.
Yeah.
Of there's a big, for people who are not familiar with the X-Men, the Roma and the kind of the other world and all of that stuff is a huge terrain to play with. And so it looks like we're going directly into there, and you're basically letting Betsy, and who knows how she took the mantle of Captain Britain, and maybe took as the word, not handed to her. And you've got Apocalypse as a conqueror going into this. That's a pretty crazy thing. By the way, I apologize. I need to bring up the chat. People are asking questions, and I should say things there, but I'm not. So sorry. What do you think, Doc?
Honestly, I could get behind if especially if they're just being villains, because let's be honest, these X-Men aren't really heroes. They're much more villains. They're conquerors. This is still Magneto's dream, and not Xavier's. But honestly, I think with the why is Betsy Captain Britain, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, yeah, Teenie Howard and her crazy weird feminism, and Jordan White and his crazy weird feminism. That's part of it, but I don't think that's the majority of it. The majority is that they broke Captain Britain, like Bryan, for the last 5 years. He's been an effeminate, weird, bearded slob that only cares about Megan and their kid, doesn't care about the job anymore. Mm-hmm. And just wants to hang out in the lighthouse, and be, have the mantle of Captain America. But so they needed to do something, and there's no way to bring Bryan back from that. You what are you going to do? Kill his kid? Have him divorce Megan? No. He's that's who he is at this point. So just so there's not a really good way. Yeah, they needed to find a way to get rid of Bryan, essentially, because they broke him. They spent the last 5 years, 6 years breaking him by making him useless, and that was by design because they didn't like Bryan. And a lot of it, honestly, I think they just didn't like the fact that, the guy that is like running the connection with Otherworld and kind of the multiverse is, a white dude from Britain. They didn't like that. Plus, now you have. So now,
we got to move on. We got like 20 more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you got one last point? Let's hear it.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, with having Quanon back and having Betsy back in her original body, you basically have two copies. There was nothing that made Quanon interesting or that made Betsy distinguished from either one. You didn't have anything that really distinguished them except for one Asian, one white chick. That was it. And especially since they gave Betsy, the same, she still had all of her martial arts skills that she shouldn't have had. You have two of the exact same character. You got to do something with one of them, to make them distinct. And I think that was the only thing they could really do with Betsy.
All right. Well, I'll buy that one. So that was the answer to that one, Noel. I hope you enjoyed that. And good luck at the market today. Now let's get to our YouTube and Twitter questions. I solicited for questions in my community tab on YouTube. Didn't get a whole lot there, but we got a lot of good feedback on Twitter. So the first one was from YouTube. It's from Logan Bunce. How do you feel about, or this is for you, Perch. How do you feel about, I think we already covered this. How do you feel about Hickman saying that each of the X-Men issues will be standalone, not really connected with the last one? This is like unlike anything else Hickman's ever done.
Yeah, like I said, I think, well, I don't think they'll be quite as standalone as he's letting on. I do think these issues will tell lots of little pieces to a bigger story. So I think they'll all be important. But the more thing is that the adventure is going to be one and done. Now, if you look at the solicits, though, in I think issue 3 and 4, they're teasing kind of a 2-part story. So who knows what we're getting there. We also don't know if people are cheating a little bit because there's a lot of double shipping that's going on this year. I think all the issues are going higher. For the record, the Bleeding Cool story about Marvel set internal targets for X-Men to achieve a certain number, and that's why their double shipping is complete and utter bullshit. Sorry. Nonsense. That is
not really double shipping.
What's that?
They're not double shipping, like, at least by the numbers that I can see. The issue shipped versus the dollars sold are right in line.
Sorry. What I mean by that is we're getting 2 issues in a month. So we're getting like a 2 and a 3 in November and a 4 and a 5 in December. So that's what I mean by double shipping. Sorry, not. I
thought you were talking about overships.
Yeah, not overships. No. So yeah, I do think, but I think it will work, and I don't think it will last long. Like we talked about earlier, I think we'll get about 6 months of this, and then I think it will lead either to an uncanny X-Men title. We don't have one yet. I think we will get one, and this book may just be the standalone title. It's kind of fleshing out the rest of the universe.
All right. So the next question is from Gateway into Comics. Great dude, awesome YouTuber. He's been on the Comics Aficionados. And like I said, you should definitely check his channel out. This one's going to go to Doc first, but I want to hear both of your thoughts on this one because it's a great question. All right. My biggest question that may never be answered by any X-Men creator for good reason is the Sentinel War inevitable?
No, I do not believe the Sentinel War is inevitable. I personally don't. I think in the comics, then yeah, they're making it. They're setting it up so that yes, it is inevitable, unless they find some. I think that's the reason why they went to the Phalanx to find a way to, basically kill AI before it grows.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what are your thoughts, Perch, on the inevitability of the Sentinel War?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Doc. I think that they are well, I think they're setting it up that it's inevitable. I think that part of maybe this storyline and kind of Moira's moving target of what she's going to do in her timeline. I'm still very curious what timeline 6 is, but anyway, I think that part of it will be, the mission was to avoid or to get human and mutant, or how do we keep the mutants from being exterminated? It was kind of Moira's thought, and I think that the mission kind of shifts a little bit as it goes. But I think they've set it up, just like Doc said, to be inevitable.
Yeah, I think Moira talked about it in House of X #2. Clearly, it always ends up in the Sentinel War. It always ends up with Nimrod, kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. So, did you have something to say, Doc?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, and that's the reason why they go to the Phalanx in Life 10 to get all their secrets to figure out how to kill AI in the cradle before it does come and wipe out mutant kind.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next question, this one's also going to be for you, Doc. From Longbox Diving, he's another YouTuber, great dude. Are the Elders mutants? The one dude looks like a tree.
Wait, or is he?
I think he was talking about Cypher Krakoa.
Yeah, I was going to say those are the Four Horsemen. Those are yeah.
But we're going to go with the Elder question. Is he a mutant?
Yes, I believe it's going to be Xavier's mind. I think Xavier is the librarian and Moira is the Elder. And I think it's going to be their respective minds into bodies that are mostly clones of theirs, but also a little bit hybrid.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we ready for the next question?
Go for it.
All right. Perch, what will they do with Moira?
I think I think she's going to be lost to them. I think that, So my bigger theory here, and maybe this is overstepping a little bit, is that the Xavier we have right now under the helmet is either a hybrid Sinister Xavier clone, or it's just Sinister, or there's control that's going on there. I don't think we're getting the true Xavier. I think when he handed over his DNA, he got cloned, and that's who we've got. I think upon recognition of Moira and her value and what she could do and everything else, I think she's a hostage somewhere. I think that
we know that she's in the no place.
Yeah, I think that the new place is a jail, if for lack of a better word. I think that she's being held there. I think that we may discover that Sinister has put some people into that zone, and that some of the X-Men we're seeing right now aren't X-Men. That for example, somebody brought up the point of would Wolverine ever let himself be reincarnated in the way that they're doing it? That doesn't seem odd to the character. Well, maybe this isn't Wolverine. Or at least this is a tainted Wolverine. If you go back to Powers of X #1, it talks about Sinister polluting the gene pool and kind of how some of these clones were done. And I have a feeling that some of these X-Men that we're seeing aren't the X-Men we think they are, and we may find that they're all stuck in the no place. And that's part of the mission of this series is how they get out.
Okay, so that's a really cool theory because she could have. When Professor X or Charles Xavier said this is the plan, and she's like, "Wait, we can't do this. We've already tried this, and it goes sideways." Like, put her in the no place, put her there with all the dissenters. Let's make some copies of them. I'll alter the minds and re-update them. So Nightcrawler could be in there because I don't think he would ever be reincarnated due to religious reasons. I don't think Wolverine would ever reincarnate due to he's been alive so long. So I think that's actually a very good point. I don't think we know everyone that's in the no place. Doc, what do you think about that theory?
I actually like that theory, and it would explain why most of them are acting so far out of character and some are borderlining on being villains. Yeah. In fact, I think probably the original Xavier is down there too.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder, so that why I'm interested, or from a structure perspective, we got 2 more issues left. We are supposedly getting a big punch reveal in the final issue. So if that big punch reveal is that we get to go to the no place and we see that there's people being held there and they're captive, and that there's basically a traitor on each team in each comic, then it sets up a pretty interesting dynamic over the next 6 months to 2 years where how many of these X-Men are going to get absorbed? If somebody figures something out, are they going to get captured and put into this place? And it sets the mutants up against kind of a new and bigger threat. Not only are they fighting for survival like they have been and the AI threat, but now they're fighting themselves. They're fighting kind of Sinister and his control over people. And I think you look at how Storm is acting. So what if, she on the Marauders team is, this copy? And what if Wolverine on X-Force is a copy? And it just, if you go through that, it also sets up an interesting dynamic for Fallen Angels in that book if none of them are copies and they're the outsiders because
they know the truth.
They know the truth. I think as being said in the interview, the description of fallen angels, people think about the old X-Men book, and certainly there will be some connective and some nods to that title, but it's more the standpoint of, the idea of Lucifer falling from heaven, or in this case, we've got these characters who are exiled, who are not comfortable in Krakoa and that utopia, and they're on the outside, and what does that make them? And I think, so anyway, that's my theory. I'm sure I'm wrong and that's off track, but it would certainly structurally set up a really nice hook for all the books. Suddenly, every book, including Excalibur, gets more interesting for readers, because if there's a mole on that team, and like somebody said, the X-Men aren't conquerors. Yeah, but Sinister is. So if he's pulling the strings and he's having them do this, I think every single book suddenly gets a lot more interesting.
Well, that plus the fact that they keep dropping references to Inferno.
Yeah.
They did it again in this episode, or in this issue.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So the next question kind of revolves around that one. So I'm going to go back to Perch. This is also from Longbox Diving. Why did Xavier reset his mind to an earlier copy?
I think because of this. My theory, it's because he was manipulated in doing so, and that was what was going on. Do you believe it's also a corrupted copy? Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll go on to the next one. Doc, this is for you. Will the original Four Horsemen make an appearance? That's also from Longbox Diving.
They may end up being in the Excalibur book.
Well, I think they're on Krakoa now. I think they arrived when all the villains arrived. What do you think?
Actually, I don't think that they arrived, because they went through to the other place.
No, once they sealed up the chasm, the Four Horsemen roamed the world. That's what it said in the book.
Really? I thought it said that they got sealed into the chasm.
That was just Araco, and then the Four Horsemen roamed the world because Apocalypse had to bring them into it.
Okay, well, in which case, then I would very, very much believe that Exodus is one of those, because he's one of the few that's old enough to be.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, no, actually, he's not, because Exodus is only about 600 years old.
But his history was muddied, so that would be an interesting. That may be an interesting way to clean up a couple people.
Yeah. Yeah, that have extremely long lifespans. That would somebody in a couple people in the chat said that they were sealed into into Araco, but Apocalypse was left to roam the earth.
Well,
I need to reread that.
I know the issue.
Yeah, I thought that they got sealed in. That was my interpretation of it, that they got sealed in on the other side. And I think they will make an appearance, but it'll be after that gets unsealed somehow.
Well, we know kind of how it's going to get unsealed, because Null's on the other side, correct?
Yeah, but I am a little behind on my Absolute Carnage.
So the panel in question is you can read it multiple ways. It says, using all of his mighty powers, he stood in the gap, pushed Araco through the chasm, set his four to sentinel that land, and sealed the chasm shut. So does that mean they're sentinel inside the land, or they're sentinel at the seal? It's a little bit hard to. You could read it both ways, actually, and the image doesn't help. So it could be either way, but I do think we will see them again for sure. And again, I think it's interesting based on our conversation here and just thinking about all these different pieces. Excalibur does have the potential to be a pretty interesting book. It's just, can it be pulled off?
Yes, I'm telling you. Once you start thinking about all this stuff, I'm like, wow, Marauders sounds amazing now that I've seen all the details and everything. Like he's really setting a lot of things up here. So the next questions are from Real Comic Stacks, a friend of the channel. He's a comics aficionado, and he's got a great YouTube channel. He wants to know, and this is for you, Doc, why the different text similar to the Ultimate Universe?
I'm sticking with the theory that I've had since issue 1, which is he's using this because he's using the Ultimate Universe to imply it's not our universe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically, if we were to ever get a panel in this book that had the all caps,
You would be in the 616.
It would be in the 616.
Okay.
So every panel that has the lowercase is not the 616.
Is that how you're reading it as well, Perch?
It is. I mean, I think it's intentional, and I think it is meant to imply that. Now, given that that's true, then it sets a lot of stuff on its ear. So then it's hard to figure out where all these pieces come together. But yeah, I think Doc is right. I just I don't know how that fits with everything else.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this one is for you, also from Real Comic Stacks. Perch, what is the sixth life of Moira?
Yeah, I'm fascinated to know that. I think they have not revealed it. They're not going to reveal it in the next 2 issues, or if it does, it's going to be the most crammed in thing ever. So I think that's going to be a mystery that hangs over our heads for the next, maybe 2 years in terms of it. But something definitely went on there. I think the behavior of Moira before and after, from life 5 to life 7, we got a radical change. And
That's when she starts murdering everybody, right?
Yeah, that's when she takes a very dark turn. So I think that there's a definite thing that happened to her, either through infection or through something she lived through or realized. There's definitely a change that happened to Moira. And I don't know, again, I feel like that's so important because it's been in our face the whole time, that it is a key to where this whole series is going and maybe how it unravels other things. I think it's critical, but there's another, I heard a theory online that again doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that the current 616 continuity is life 6. So we're bouncing before and after where we're currently at, which would be an interesting theory. So I don't know. All I know is I think of the important things that Hickman's dropping in that book, that life 6 is probably one of the most, if not the most important thing that he's done here.
So it's not a red herring.
No, I don't think at all. I think it's pretty critical.
So do you think that we have seen events from Life 6, but it just hasn't been?
No, I do think that's true. Yeah, I think that we have seen more of that life, that it's just not been spelled out for us in the timeline. But I think we have seen bits of that 6th life. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because that's kind of one of my thoughts, at least. He just hasn't told us. I do believe that within some of these sequences, you're actually seeing multiple lifetimes, but it seems seamless.
Yes.
It's not quite what it seems.
Because one of the things that Hickman said, I mean, early on, but it may have been for a different book, but I know it's something he likes to play with, is that he likes the concept of inevitability. So what does it mean for, an action, no matter how much you change certain things, the same action is going to come and occur. So playing on that theory, it means that a lot of things we're reading, you are seeing the same events happen across multiple timelines because there are inevitable events. Goes to your question of, is the Sentinel War inevitable? I think there's more than just the Sentinel War that's inevitable. It's just certain actions, certain behaviors of people. Some can change, some cannot change. And I think, to your point, we're seeing a bunch of panels kind of all intermixed with each other, and we're assuming it's a great narrative, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we do have a question from the viewers right now. I'm not even. This is from FF2 Doc. Who do you think are the 2 husks in Timeline 3? I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to. You guys know what he's talking about?
Is he talking about the 2 that appeared in the first
Is he talking
issue?
about the librarian and the elder?
Yeah, are you talking about that? Are you talking about the people in the garden that's shown in Powers? Give us a comment. Let us know a little bit more what you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, yeah, just give us a little bit more information. I don't remember seeing Husk in the 3rd timeline. We will move on to this. Wait, do we have another question?
Well, do you mean Husk as a person? Do you mean Husk the character? What do you?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the last question from Real Comic Stacks for Doc, and then we'll hit FF2 up after that. Is Krakoa infected with the techno-organic virus in the Timeline 3? That's what it looked like to me, the X3 timeline.
Mm-hmm. I think we're back to talking about the
Phalanx.
But the 4 horsemen, or the horsemen in that timeline, right? Where it was Krakoa mixed with Cypher, mixed with Warlock.
No, that was the X2 timeline. This is the Phalanx one, the one that's 1,000 years from
now. Yeah. Yes, I believe so, but I believe that most things kind of are at that point. I think that even the people are at least partially not inorganic. You know, the whole blue and the markings and everything, I don't believe that that's entirely organic. I believe that there may be some degree of like a techno-organic infection that's at like a genetic level or something. Or they're hybrids that included Warlock's DNA.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's been some infection that's happened, or some merging of consciousness. I bet people would object to the infection as the term there, but I think there's been some merging of consciousness that's occurred.
Yeah.
All right, so Dane Barrett is saying FF2 was talking about the people in the garden that we saw. I think that was at the very end of Powers of 10, #1.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's right. So the husk of the clone body is shown at the end. So I took that as just it's not a bigger mystery. It's just that, for lack of a better word, it's a zoo. It's a reminder of kind of humans at their place. Humanity has been reverted back into almost an Adam and Eve type, roaming the jungle as savages type scenario. I think that was the message that was being sent there, is that evolution has happened and humanity has fallen, and that's where they are. They're there. And I think that's kind of what they were talking about as well, right? Previous to that panel of just, the humans, we beat the humans to
beyond that.
Yeah, we're beyond that. So I think it's kind of like, this is what humanity has been reduced to. It's been reduced back to its origin. That was my take.
Okay. I thought it was like the Garden of Eden as well, but I didn't know if they were watching the past. But you think it's more like a zoo?
Well, yeah. I mean, just not necessarily like a memory, more than this is where it landed for humans.
Okay, I thought he was talking about the two from issue 1 that because I think that
page.
Yeah.
With the librarians kind of looking over a thing, and then there's like, it looks like the Garden of Eden and two shadows came up.
Yeah.
That's the end.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That is a good thought. I thought it might have meant more to that, but I think you're probably right. So let's go to the next question. This is from Pete Koff. Who got the last one? That was Perch, right? This one's for you, Doc. Is Xavier's new look extremely similar to evil Reed Richards, the maker, just a coincidence or on purpose? Is it a sign of trouble on the horizon that Moira didn't plan on?
Yes, it's mere coincidence. It's Xavier has historically always gone with the kind of all black jumpsuit, or like black, unitard. Whenever other than like the late issue 100s, right before he got reparalyzed and went off with Lilandra to the Shi'ar space for like 100 issues. Yeah, he's almost always gone with, every time he's walked, it's wearing that black costume and then the big Cerebro helmet. There's only so much things you can do with a giant silver helmet.
With an X on it.
Yeah, his has an X, and the Maker's is, Conehead like. Yeah, there's only so much you can do with that look. But he's always, I can count probably a half dozen times he's been walking or not walking and went with the all black unitard as his uniform, his like field uniform. So it's mere coincidence, in my opinion.
Coincidence.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Do you agree with that, Perch, real quick?
Yeah, I do. I think it's the idea. I think Hickman likes to play on the idea of like this kind of mental augmentation, or kind of how that all works. So I think it's a similar idea to evil Reed Richards, but I don't think there's no clue there. For example, that it's actually, I've heard some people say, oh, it's actually evil Reed Richards who's in Xavier's body. They're not going to go there. I feel confident in saying that.
Yeah. There's no reason to. There's no connection.
Right.
Yeah, plus Reed Richards is going to play into the story when Franklin Richards finally, they fight over him, or maybe he emerges on Krakoa, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the next question is from Ace. Perch, is what we're reading a life of Moira, but not in continuity?
Well, that's kind of what we've been discussing. I think so. My early guess when we were on your show like a month ago talking about this, my guess was yes, that this was kind of an earlier life or some other, like a cautionary tale of where it could all go. That's what I thought. But now that it's clear that the Dawn of X books are going to keep running with this, if this was a previous life not in continuity, it would be a pretty major gamble, I think, on Marvel's part, that you're going to have all these books, all these things coming right after the Age of X nonsense that they did, go for 2 years in different continuity. You're either making a decision that it's never going to come back and they're never going to have kind of in continuity X-Men books in the future, and it's going to be a separate universe, or this is what we're getting. And I think my belief is that we are in the current continuity now, and we are going to see this big threat. And like I said, the thing that I'm excited about is this going to lead us to a really nice do-over, if you will, where we're going to get a, Avengers versus X-Men, or an Illuminati versus X-Men with, real stakes, not just, the way AVX was set up was nonsense in a lot of cases. Now we've got, potentially Wakanda and Latvernia, fighting for their lives with strange allies. That's a big idea from Hickman. That would be the big giant crossover event in 2022. Sorry.
So Riley Odlin is saying in Invaders they mentioned Krakoa.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's probably in the continuity.
It
also,
does.
Yeah. If you're watching right now and you actually have some questions, it looks like we're going to have about 10 minutes on the end if you want to ask questions, because we only have 3 questions left from the Twitter peoples. All right, Doc. Where's Archangel and Nightcrawler post House and Powers of X in 10?
Wait, Nightcrawler and who?
Archangel. They don't appear to be on any of the teams, even though they got resurrected.
Huh. I expect them both to be in the X-Men book.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly,
Yeah.
While they keep using just Summers family members on the covers of those books and Wolverine, I expect that to be the kind of catch-all book. So I expect they'll both appear there.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next question is another one of my Pinoy viewers. I think we've already hit this, but I'll ask Perch anyway. How will the Avengers react to all this?
Yeah, I think it's a growing thread. I think that you've got these seeds and these nations becoming dependent on this Krakoa and this whole environment. I think the Avengers and a lot of these characters will be distrustful of it. But how do you be distrustful of something that looks so, so nice, so peaceful to other people? The mutants are bringing peace. And I think it will resonate there. I think it's being set up in a way that those books can continue to kind of do their own thing. And that's good, because the Avengers is just a giant cluster right now. And the Avengers need to take part so badly. I didn't have a big thing against Aaron. I thought he was okay, and he sold books, and that was all fine. I even, again, not a popular opinion, but his female Thor book rose sales, and it did well, honestly, in stores. I know people don't like that, but it's true. But the Avengers just has gone completely off the rails as a book and a franchise.
Died at War of the Realms.
Oh yeah, War of the Realms was not a good payoff to all those storylines and the things that he's teasing for the future of, the Ghost Rider current storyline is bombing hard in stores. So the Avengers need they need this. For anything else in like 2 years, they're going to need this giant threat storyline. But to watch a Captain America or Thor and Iron Man having to work with Doctor Doom potentially to stave off this threat is going to be a fascinating thing to watch too.
Honestly, I think that there was no reason to ever add a Ghost Rider. Should never be an Avenger. That's
sure. Yeah.
He's
actually that character was kind of the best one on the early runs, like just as far as the character goes.
Okay, yeah, but he still, Robbie Reyes is a decent character.
Yeah, he's actually really cool. But
I like the character. Yeah, I like the character. It just, man, that is a mess. You got whole issues where the Avengers are in a hot tub. It's Christ, it's a mess.
Yeah, and then you have whole issues where you're like going back to 10 million BC, and then a whole issue of them just like recruiting people for Wakanda. It was like, what am I reading here? balls.
Yeah, no, it's so bad, and I don't know. The challenge, AVX wanted to tell the story. Bendis wanted to tell a story of, hey, peace is brought to the world, and the X-Men did it. And then how are the Avengers going to react to it? How are the Avengers going to handle the fact the X-Men actually saved the world and solved the problem, rather than kind of this reactive Avengers mode? But it didn't do it well. I mean, the story barely touched on that before they quickly made Cyclops super evil, and they couldn't restrain themselves from telling the story in a complex way. And this storyline feels a lot more like we're going to get that dynamic.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. The X-Men have either tried to save themselves or save the world 3 times in the last 15 years. And every time, while they were being the good guy and actually fixing the world, the Avengers had to be called the good guy and then bring back racism or terrible environments or, all of the bad stuff in the world. The X-Men fix the planet, make it actual utopias, and the Avengers need to fix that.
Yeah.
And they're the good guys and the X-Men are the bad guys.
And that's a cool dynamic to play off of. So I'm curious how that all goes. And Chillmonger in the chat, I look, if you like the issue, that's awesome, and I mean it. I love it when people like comics. I don't. I actually find I learn a lot from those people about what they like and that dynamic, how to sell those books. So I should take a step back. The book is landing with some people. Sales have suffered, and it feels from a book and how you target it aimless right now. But I want all these ships to rise. So let's, if this is how you do it, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have another question from the live audience. Doc, when they mentioned Phoenix at the end of the book as something the Phalanx fears, you think the old Firebird will appear in the last 2 issues or get a new host or something?
I think they'll recognize that they need the Phoenix to defeat the Phalanx. I mean, especially if the Phalanx kind of ends up as the big bad for the series, all of the series going forward. Like that is the thing they need to protect themselves against. And if so, then I think Rachel ends up with the Phoenix again, because they really don't have anything to do with Rachel. Rachel's just bargain basement Jean, unless she's the Phoenix host.
All right. So next up, Perch, we got FF2. The Avengers have limitations like going to other countries without permission. They represent a nation. Do you think that if they invade Krakoa, it will cause a war?
I think it will cause a reaction. I think the X-Men and kind of this new status quo that's been built up, and especially if it's Sinister pulling the strings behind Xavier, I think that they're waiting for some of this to happen. They're expecting. I think that some of the mission behind X-Force and some of these books, I think the X-Men are expecting that there's going to be pushback, and they're building up some level of army to fight that pushback. And I think, if they invade Krakoa, it absolutely kind of trigger the war. And I think the Avengers will know that. I think we'll see that reflected in the X-Men book with the Avengers and Fantastic Four and a couple of these other characters of not liking this, but understanding that if they go and invade it, it is in effect invading another country, and maybe worse than that, it's invading a country that's feeding and supplying the world. So I think it would cause a very messy war.
Well, they already did that once.
Yeah.
They invaded a sovereign country because when they were in Utopia, they were a sovereign country.
Right.
And the Avengers invaded them once already. It started a war.
All right.
Doing it again is just, that's really dumb, especially when it's not only just an island, but it's also a living island that can eat them.
Yeah.
the X-Men don't. Here's the thing: the Avengers can't really invade Krakoa because they can just the X-Men could just like move to the side and be like, Krakoa, eat them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're here. All right, just we'll let the island itself eat you, and just be done. We don't even need to fight this fight.
All right, Doc. We got another question for you. Tevye wants to know, do you think the Ultimate X-Men from X-Men Blue will make a comeback and appear in this new X-Men universe?
No. No, I don't think anything from X-Men Blue is going to get really referenced. The Ultimate X-Men they're gone. Sorry, they're gone. Nobody cares. I think Jimmy Hudson's going to get conveniently thrown back into the universe that doesn't exist anymore. I don't think. Honestly, they have too many. If they have any intelligence at all, they will start eliminating a lot of their redundancies, at least redundant characters.
Mm-hmm. All right, there you go, Tevia. Throw X-Men Blue, throw X-Men Yellow, and X-Men Red into the sun, and let it burn forever.
Yes.
Perch. What are the chances of Krakoa swallowing up local territories like Madripoor? So I think this is actually in play because it's definitely hinted at that Krakoa is going to do an expansion.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it won't be Madripoor, but I think it will be kind of other areas. I think that expansion may be one of the things that triggers the characters who aren't X-Men feeling like they need to act. I think it's going to be one of those escalation points. But yeah, Krakoa will. I think Madripoor will play into this comic of being one of the sources for the Black Ops part of Marauders and some of these other places of being a place to traffic some of these drugs, places that don't have it. I think Madripoor will wind up being a pretty key place. I think Hickman said that the Savage Land and Madripoor, and I forget, there's one other location he mentioned, is he wants to take ownership and control over them rather than being kind of the default, bad guy place that other comics use and actually use them. Oh, Genosha was the other. Just have them be these territories that go back to being, important to X-Men lore.
So yeah, they're going to the Savage Land in X-Men 3 and 4, correct? In December?
That's right. That's what it says anyway.
Mm-hmm. If it's not full of it. All right. So here's the last question that we got from Twitter. We'll send it to Doc first, and then Perch, you can weigh in on this as well. This is from Joshua Jenkins. My biggest question is, what does X3 have to do with everything?
I think it's their it's their overarching big bad. Mm-hmm. And it's establishing how they find a way to beat it. That they recognize that, okay, they can solve the issue with humans and mutants. They can solve the issue with the earthbound AI and mutants, but they can't. They can solve mutants versus mutants, but they can't solve the phalanx yet. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that they need to be able to solve. Because that's coming eventually, even if it's 1,000 years from now. Mm-hmm. It's coming eventually, and they need to have a plan in place. They want to have every inevitability covered.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that one, Perch?
Yeah, I think it's right. I think that is the big bad, or the inevitable threat that comes. I think that we're seeing kind of multiple levels of threats coming to the X-Men, which is nice. Rather than just a single villain, we're getting multiple kind of fronts here. I think there's the immediate threat of what's going on with Xavier, what's going on with Sinister. I'm putting myself out there, I know, but I do believe that Mr. Sinister is going to be Hickman's big bad for the next couple of years. That's going to be the immediate threat. And I think that the Phalanx and that whole future, the X3 timeline, it is the thing that they have to face and deal with that is coming for them beyond that. And I think that's going on. I think we need to look really carefully. Somebody just mentioned in the chat, I think we need to look very carefully at the villains. Who are the villains that we're really going to get in this run? Because it's not going to be all kind of,
So Mega Sentinel, Dr. Gregor.
Yeah. It just where is Cassandra Nova still around? What from X-Men Red? Whatever happened to that? Is there the Shadow King? Is that still in play? Where are some of these other characters that we saw these villains kind of walk onto the island? Which ones are going to be go along with this? Which ones are going to be kind of co-opted Sinister if that's Sinister's plan? Which ones are not going to want to play ball and maybe go to the no place along with some of the good guys, if you will. I think that looking and really, for all of us who are big X-Men fans and Doc and kind of looking through the history, I think one of the best things we can do right now is look back on decades and thousands of issues and say, who are the really big villains that are still out there and still are in play? Because I think that Hickman is either going to address or deal with all of them. And
it's got to be Arcade.
Yeah, they won't be Arcade for sure. Arcade will be. Arcade is the found axe. That's exactly it.
It all comes down to Arcade and Count Nefaria.
Yeah, be perfect.
Yeah,
love it.
All right, guys. So, man, we answered a lot of questions. We covered a lot of ground. This 2 hours really flew by.
It really did.
This is the second issue of the Adamantium Hour. I'm retroactively making the Sinister Secrets stream I did with Doc a couple weeks back, the first. And I think this went really well. Thank you all so much for joining us. We got a lot of great feedback. We got a lot of great interaction for the viewers and for the people that submitted questions from Twitter. Really appreciate that. Doc, if people want to follow you, they want to talk about some X-Men, some Powers of X or Powers of 10, House of X, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, just at Science Jesus. I'm mostly just yelling about the X-Men and what's good and what's bad.
Mm-hmm. And if you can engage him about X-Men speak, he will not have time to get himself banned or blocked by comic book writers. And that
probably not. Yeah, I probably won't get blocked by any more comic writers if I'm talking about X-Men with somebody else.
Absolutely. And Perch, where can people find you? You got a lot of stuff going on.
I've got a lot of stuff. Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Comic Perch. It's the best place to find me. I have an account on Facebook, but I do not use it, so please don't message there. And then I keep pumping out videos, one a day at least. And for fans of the X-Men and everything else, the interview with Bryan Hill was amazing. I got to give him credit. I was expecting 15, 20 minutes of his time. He gave me an hour and a half. And toward the end, I should put the timestamp in there, but it's right about the hour mark. He goes into Fallen Angels a lot, what he's going to do and his plan. So if you haven't seen that, just go in there, fast forward there, take a listen to that, and you hear from the horse's mouth kind of what that comic's going to be like. It's good stuff.
And if you're watching this on the replay, there will be a link in the video description, and there will also be a link in the end screens if you want to go check out that interview. I highly recommend it. It's a great interview. Awesome get, Comic Perch. And he has a great channel. You should be watching all his videos, especially his X-Men stuff. Thank you all for joining us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. And, of course, you can watch all my content right here on Thinking Critical. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Salamapo. It's time to dance because I'm out.
Thank you.
All right, y'all.